What do we mean when we say someone has a sense of humour? Ainsneck pointed out three different possible meanings. First, we may mean that the person laughs at the same thing that we do. This is known as the conformist meaning. Second, we may mean that the person laughs a great deal and is easily amused. The quantitative meaning. Third, we may mean that the person is the life and soul of the party, telling funny stories and amusing other people, known as the productive meaning. Freud's theoretical writings on humour are contained in two publications, the book Jokes and the Relation to the Unconscious, and a short paper entitled Humour. Freud's three types of categories: jokes, the comic, and humour. Each of these involves a saving of psychic energy, which, having become unnecessary for its normal purpose, is dissolved in the form of laughter. Jokes make use of the number of rational joke work techniques, such as displacement, condensation, and unification, that allow an individual to briefly express unconscious aggressive and sexual impulses that normally would be repressed. Freud's second category of laughter, the comic, has to do with non-verbal sources of entertainment, such as slapstick comedy and circus clowns. In such situations, according to Freud, the observer summons a certain amount of mental energy in anticipation of what is expected to happen. When the expected does not occur, this mental energy becomes redundant and is released in laughter. Freud suggested that the comic involves delighted laughter at a childish behavior in oneself or others, which he describes as the regained lost laughter of childhood. The third category, humour, occurs in situations in which people would normally experience negative emotions such as fear, sadness, or anger, but the perception of amusing or strange elements in the situation provides them with an altered perspective of the situation and allows them to avoid experiencing this negative effect. Other authors, such as Knox and Mendes, emphasizes that a sense of humour provides one with a sense of freedom from the constraints of life. Mendes noted that our social roles require us to suppress and deny many of our impulses and desires, and to conform to our surroundings and the expectations placed on us by others. Although these constraints are beneficial for survival in society, they also lead to feelings of self-annihilation and loss of freedom. Humour, according to Mendes, is a means of coping with this paradox, allowing one to gain a sense of freedom and self-respect while continuing to live within life's constraints. This approach seems to suggest that individuals with a sense of humour, as compared to their more serious counterparts, tend to be more non-conformist and subversive, taking a more playful, rebellious approach to the most serious aspects of life, while continuing to embrace life despite its injustice, hypocrisy, and foolishness. Exaggerated and absurd violence is still a huge component of slapstick comedy, as its farce or dramatic buffoonery and horseplay involve ridiculously impossible situations. Slapstick is considered low comedy, as opposed to high comedy, which takes advantage of sophisticated dialogue through wit and satire. Overall, what slapstick comedy relies on and takes advantage of is exaggeration. Outside of puppet theatre, slapstick was common in the performances of clowns and mimes. Slapstick relies on the aesthetics of grand, unrealistic gestures and violence to act out absurd scenes far more than it relies on dialogue. Charlie Chaplin is iconic for his success in slapstick comedy-based silent films. He became one of the most recognized individuals in the US and Europe during his career. Chaplin built his popularity through 10 to 25-minute slapstick short films, though it is his full-length films, City Lights, Modern Times, and The Great Dictator, that keeps his reputation thriving today. When sound entered the film industry, it was initially seen as bad news for slapstick comedy films. The low comedy of slapstick had been able to thrive in the film industry without competition from humor that required dialogue. High comedy now had a place in film, and many producers thought sound had no place in slapstick. Sound was soon incorporated into slapstick, but mainly for exaggerated sound effects such as bursting balloons, car horns, and of course the sound of beating. The use of clever comments was eventually appreciated, and the fast action and physical gags that characterized slapstick were accompanied by subtle, clever dialogue. Slapstick comedy can be explained by a few of the theories of humor. The superiority theory states that laughter is the expression of our delight in the shortcomings of others. The theory focuses on humor in the negative light of laughing at people for being foolish, which makes ourselves feel good in comparison. Before other theories of humor surfaced, this was the only standing explanation for why situations were funny. Superiority theory led to humor being shown in society because raising yourself up at another's expense is unethical. In slapstick comedy, a fool is very common. Charlie Chaplin played the clown of society in his films. With any slapstick comedy comes at least one fool character. The recurring theme of fools, clowns, and idiots in slapstick makes the superiority theory a compatible explanation, but it is not the only theory that can be applied. In slapstick comedy, there is a driven need for people to solve conflict by striking one another and fighting. Freud would have been quick to say that violence in slapstick is enjoyable because the urge for violence is strongly suppressed in each of us, that we almost need to be able to joke about it to release the nervous tension of that suppression. According to the book Popular Film and Television Comedy by Stephen Nagel, gags can involve suspense as well as surprise. You can do wonders in a scene by letting the audience in on a secret the character doesn't know. There can be a set of relationships between characters occupying positions of knowledge in a plot and in a gag, and characters who in both cases engage a position of ignorance. Such links imply traits typical of characters in comedies. They can be intelligent, smart, and ingenious like Chaplin and Keaton, or naive, stupid, or ignorant like Laurel and Hardy. Suspense gags are for the predictable to become the inevitable. If there is a banana skin around, someone will fall on it. 2 points need to be made here. 1 is that knowledge in suspense is never total, even in this context. There is always room for surprise in the way the anticipated event takes place, in who will fall on the banana skin, and in where, when, and how it actually happens. The second point is that surprise can reside not at the level of the event itself, but at the level of the way the event is narrated. The process of narration can be crucial to the production of comic surprise. It can be crucial also to the timing of a gag. Gags like jokes are organized around a nodal point. It is at this point that laughter occurs. Whether anticipated or not, a comic point is always brief. It is always possible, though, to string a series of such points together in rapid succession. In a gag involving suspense, its introduction is delayed, where the narration provides the information necessary to generate anticipation or slowly unfolds the events with which it will end. In a gag of pure surprise, on the other hand, where the comic point cannot be foreseen, the event in which it occurs will be presented as rapidly as possible. In 1915, The Tramp was released, but seeing as this is Charlie Chaplin's first piece of work, the elements of slapstick is hardly there. I could only point out this scene of suspense here, where we see Chaplin put the egg in his pocket. We know the egg will break somehow, we just don't know when or how. This is the suspense aspect. This was also his first debut for his tramp persona. The Tramp is a smart film that folds despair neatly into the slapstick, with our hero playing a kind-hearted drifter down on his luck who finds work at a farm. There's plenty of fun with pitchforks and ladders. But at the film's bittersweet finish, thinking he has been rejected, Chaplin waddles off down a dusty road, at first disheartened, and then walks off with a spring in his step. The Idle Class was released in 1921. It has physical humour and the plot features a smart play on identities. Most importantly, there is a deeper message about society. The Little Tramp is on the run, and a big party filled with people in costumes is the perfect getaway. The husband who the Little Tramp is mistaken for is dressed in a full night costume. While a simple lift of his helmet would have been enough to settle the confusion, the matter is dragged out almost to the point of disbelief. However, you buy into the problem the film offers because it is hilarious. The innocent yet plotting facial expressions on the Little Tramp are genuine and funny. Because we and the Little Tramp know exactly what is going on, we understand his point of view perfectly. The golf scenes in the beginning are prime examples of Chaplin's use of physical humour. In the first half of the film, where the husband walks into a telephone booth with no pants, only to have people arrive near him, offers a hilarious scene where the husband plots on how to get out of the situation. This will be a suspense scene as well as surprise because you don't know how he will get out, and we are surprised how he does. Also, again near the beginning, when the husband reads the letter and starts crying, he turns around revealing that he is actually just shaking a bottle of wine, which again is the element of surprise. We thought one thing and it was something entirely different. The ideal class offers empathic feelings toward a lower class. The audience likes the little tramp, who represents the common man or woman in his stories. In some shorts, he takes on the elite class. In others, he is among the elites, but is always not quite part of that world. He is always outside, looking in. The Circus was released in 1928 and is one of Charlie Chaplin's first films where there are actual words being said, even if it's not dialogue. In the opening scene, you can hear music and Chaplin singing. However, this is non-diegetic, so I won't count this as his first film with dialogue. When the tramp is first introduced, there is suspense right off the bat, from when the thief puts the stolen wallet in the tramp's pocket. Later on in the scene, the tramp is surprised, and we know there was money in his pocket, but the surprised look on the tramp's face is what makes this scene funny. And he still takes the money, which also creates suspense in the viewer, because we know something is about to go wrong as soon as he took the money. Throughout the film, the surprise element was strongly used. It was used for his trial at the circus, when he was meant to put the apple on his head and eat it, but he substitutes it in for a banana because the apple had a worm in it. The donkey chasing him numerous times, and the man he dragged to the floor so he can stand on him for a better view, when the audience thought he would help him up instead. Little things like falling unexpectedly, or when he does something wrong he will act all sweet and innocent, or even run. The news of a lover for the young woman, and Chaplin's exaggeration of the news when he heard this. This scene was funny due to the tramp's expressions and movements. If this wasn't done well, it wouldn't have been as funny. The tramp watches as Rex performs on the high wire, and Murmur sighs and bats her eyes. Later, Rex misses a performance, and the tramp seizes the chance to go on the wire himself to win back her admiration. With the device of a secret safety wire supposedly manned by a prop man, he walks on his hands, jumps and dances high above the crowd. Chaplin loses his pants, has monkeys climb all over him, and they even stick their tails in his mouth and bite in his nose. And finally, placing a banana peel in his way. This was at the peak of suspense because we as the audience didn't know how he would end up and how he would even get down. The tragedy of the circus is that the tramp is an outsider even among his own kind. As he picks up his heels and resumes his lonely journey, the camera lingers watching him go. In a few moments he regains the bounce in his step. Humor and sentiment intertwine. Chaplin's overwhelming fixation in the first section, Modern Times, is the tyranny of technology and society, how humanity is forced to fit around and within the machines and institutions in modern society. Basically, saying that the worker's body is an extension of the machines and not the other way around, and they're unable to escape from being watched, even in their most private spaces. This theme of technology enslaving man is emphasized in the opening section of the film, which takes place in a factory in which all workers are overseen by giant monitors. Furthermore, the humans work at the pace of the machines, a pace that is adjusted several times to comic effect, and results in a scene in which the tramp experiences a nervous breakdown and begins to wrench anything and everything that looks even slightly like a nut, which made this funny, especially when he saw the woman with the button near her bosom, because of how he approached her, and you knew exactly what he was thinking. This also includes his co-worker's nose, the buttons on a different woman's dress, and a fire hydrant. While this scene works wonderfully on a purely comic level, it also reveals how mechanic labor that requires no creativity or thought dehumanizes people, reducing them to little more than cogs in a machine. Indeed, the film is filled with visual metaphors, from the tramp disappearing into the machine itself and being moved along by giant cogs, to a scene in which he is forcibly fed bolts by a contraption. Even though these scenes had hidden meanings, they were all funny at the same time because of the element of surprise. It was unexpected, and because of that, it made us laugh. There was quite a bit of surprise in this film, from the cocaine in the salt shaker to the radio talking about gas. However, most of these scenes wouldn't have been funny without the tramp's reaction. There was surprise on the radio when it was talking about gas right after someone had an upset tummy. This was mostly funny because Chaplin himself was surprised, and his reaction made us laugh.
If you are suffering from gastritis, don't forget to try.
And there was suspense in the salt shaker scene when he accidentally mistakes the cocaine for the salt. We also had a surprise when the machine crashed the man's watch and jacket and they both discovered what had happened. But again, we laughed at the surprised face. Lastly, surprise in the scene when he sings and loses his cuffs with the song written on it. So we had to improvise. In my opinion, this scene wouldn't have been funny without his reaction and how he lost them. You see them fly off so dramatically that you can't help but laugh. The biggest suspense scene is one of his most popular scenes, the roller skating scene. There is so much suspense in this scene because Chaplin decides to blindfold himself and roller skate around the mall to impress the young woman, but unaware of the stairway that he could drop through. He keeps getting closer and closer, terrorizing the audience, before finally the woman stops him. The audience didn't know if he would fall and get his leg caught in a rope at the last second, or if he would realize what he was doing and stop himself at the last moment. Hence, suspense. In 1936, the talkies have already established itself for almost 20 years, yet Chaplin and specialist in silent pantomime refuses to dialogue. The only human voice we hear are passed by the filter process technology, which is the boss who speaks to his workers via his television screen. Only exception is when Chaplin improvises his song in the restaurant, and even that is in gibberish. Chaplin recognized that Modern Times was the finale for The Tramp and deliberately included many gags and sequences as a loving farewell to the character and a tribute to the visual comedy tradition. However, the spine that holds the story together is the journey of survival taken by the tramp and the young woman. The final shot of the film, as the tramp walks down a road into the unknown, is more than a repeat of Chaplin's signature finale. This time, the tramp is not alone, and this time, the tramp carries a legacy of silent film down the road with him. Modern Times, as Hollywood's last silent film, represents the end of an era. An assured combination of suspense and pitch-black comedy, Monsieur Vendoux proceeds as a series of sketches, mixing light slapstick with snappier dialogue than anything Chaplin had ever attempted before. Both the humor and the tension stem from Chaplin's attempts to convince his victims to empty their bank accounts before he kills them, and the women's attempts to get their dreamboat to be more like a regular husband who stays at home and helps around the house. The comedic core of the movie lies in the scenes between Chaplin and Martha Ray, who plays a quick-tempered, overly affectionate lottery winner. She's the unkillable object in the path of Chaplin's ruthless rogue, and his elaborate, ill-fated schemes to end her life, and where Chaplin, the silent star, shows his still formidable flair for building visual gags within a still frame. There is a surprise element here when Chaplin thought he drank the wine with poison in it and thought he was going to die, as well as the surprised look on his face when he saw the maid with no hair. The surprise he gets from knowing his wife is there at his wedding and everything he does to try and avoid her, as well as the intense feeling the audience gets from wondering if he'll get caught, and lastly, the suspense when the woman discovers Vendoux in the restaurant. Many commentators have noted that clearly it is the tramp who shuffles off to the guillotine, even though it is Verdu we see going towards it. In the documentary extra, Claude Charbel reveals Chaplin's crucial choice of shooting this last scene first, as if he needed to get the tramp out of the way, kill him off once and for all, rid himself of the persona in order to play a person.
This shot is nothing if not a typical fade-out gag for Charlie the Tramp, as André Bazin wrote when the film opened.